Hello. So you may be noticing that this video was already uploaded and I am uploading it again. Well, I have to re-edit it and upload it again due to the fact that I did not have permission from the creators before, and I have deleted a lot of videos because of this. From now on, I will be having permission from the creators, and please enjoy these stories. And there is one new story in this video. I'm not sure how to begin this, whatever this is, but it didn't just affect me, but my family in different ways, and it continued to mess with me for years after we moved from house to house. I'm trying to take something that did many things over several years and just trim it down to details that seem important. And I'm sorry if it reads weird or awkward. My grandmother was supposed to have her side of the family traced all the way back to an unregistered family of natives that escaped the Trail of Tears. And after telling a person of this strange thing that I normally kept a secret, they suggested that it might be a Skinwalker. But I don't know. I know that there was a lot of family strife in that house, where the haunting started that bubbled up to the surface. A spirit there liked to scare me by calling my name, slamming doors, giving me strange nightmares, and even mimicking voices of family members. The first time I can think of it appearing is when we were coming back from a road trip that night. Dad was driving and he hits the brakes hard and swerves because he'd seen a wolf with no eyes step into our lane. It would look at our oncoming car and it scared him. Because everyone was asleep, he was the only one who saw it. There was nobody around to suggest anything had physically been there. The second time I think it showed itself was many years after. We had long moved from the house that this all started in. I was home alone at night, messaging a friend, and I had seen a huge figure walk up the road, and I froze. As it approached and eventually passed by the house we were living in, and from what I remember, something with a strange skull kinda like that, of a vervet monkey skull as a head, or covering its head, and the rest completely hidden behind a cloak of some sort of dark color fur. It hasn't been around for a bit now, but while it was around or possibly pursuing me, it had caused a lot of hardship for me and my family. I remember that if I talked or thought about it too much, it would draw its attention back to me when it seemed like it had left, and I would have let my guard down. Whatever it is, it always made me feel terrified and unsafe. I used to have symbols of protection from whatever religion I could think of, and try to find some sort of protection from it. I'm not sure what this entity is, but this is not a story I share much, as I know how it sounds, and I would rather not deal with the ridicule and dismissive comments. So as a preface to this story, I was driving on Sade Road 54, a road in Florida that goes all the way through the state. For the most part, it used to be all woods. It was 3:45 a.m., and I was driving to my friend's house, who lives 45 minutes away, to carpool to our job in a city about 90 minutes away from where he lived. I was leaving the city I lived in and was driving through the more heavily wooded areas at a red light. As I was waiting for the light to turn green, I saw the glow of two bright orange eyes. The woods were approximately 25 feet from the main road. The eyes got closer, like it hadn't seen me, and it had looked to be about 6 feet tall, thin, like quite thin. It was too dark to see features, but when our eyes connected, the thing bolted into the woods. It just didn't look human, frankly. At this point I thought it might be a bear or something, as it was standing on its back 2 legs. I mean, that son of a bitch was quick for its size. I have no idea what I saw, but the profile seems to look like a Skinwalker or a Wendigo. I have no idea. Any possible help or info to explain what I saw would be appreciated. Before I tell you this story, let me give you a little bit of background about myself. I'm 37, 36 at the time of this encounter, and I've always been interested in the paranormal. I've had a couple of encounters and experiences that don't quite fit this sub, so I'll post those elsewhere. I'd like to backtrack for a moment and emphasize that interested in the paranormal does not mean an outright believer. I'm certainly open to it, but more often than not, I'll enter a situation with an agnostic attitude and instantly develop one of skepticism once I start assessing and evaluating everything. That being said, I do love a good mystery and don't think for a moment that people who believe in such things are lying and or stupid. We all have our reasons for believing what we do. I tried sending this through a voicemail to Monsters Among Us a while ago, but I don't think it ever got aired. Anyway, let's get on with it. I was working 1.5 jobs in 2019, and the 0.5 was an on-call assistant private investigator, and the main one was a security guard. We mainly did patrols for apartments and small handful of residential contracts. This particular event took place at the 19th Avenue and Camelback, which, if you're from Phoenix, you know is a pretty shady part of town. The apartments I patrolled were just south of there. They were predominantly low-income tenants, half of whom were refugees from all over the globe. The complex is well known in the area for theft, violence, and break-ins, and so on. I liked patrolling it because I felt like I was helping people who genuinely needed it, and the vast majority of them were very grateful that I was there. I got to know many of them very well and would often talk and shoot the breeze before I had to start making my rounds again. One of the people I talked to was a native guy who I won't name for obvious reasons. He was often on his balcony getting drunk and high, things which we were supposed to report, but fuck that. As long as you weren't causing any trouble or making a lot of noise, I'm not saying shit about it. And would usually say hi to me when I arrived on post, and we'd talk for a while. Then I'd start my shift. Never any real issues with the guy. He liked listening to his music and having a few beers and having a blunt or two. He seemed like a nice guy, and he had a tattoo on his chest of some China dolls, though I have no idea if they play into this encounter or not. Anyway, in the summer of 2019, I was doing my rounds around 8:30 p.m., and I hear him chanting loudly in his native language. I went to see if he was okay, as he's never done this before. When I got there, he was inside, so I kept doing my patrol until I heard him again not long after. I went back to his side of the complex and saw him. His pregnant fiancée and his son, who I had never met before, coming downstairs, and he looked at me. He said, "Hey man, follow me." When I was walking behind them, I saw what looked like a giant knife in the son's hand. But when we got to the parking lot, I could see it was just a very large feather, and his feather had two smaller ones, maybe from a juvenile eagle. When we entered the parking lot, I saw a native woman standing there, who I'd kicked out earlier for being loud and yelling at a guy who was the roommate of the native tenant. I'd seen him before and knew he lived there, but didn't know he was his roommate. I don't remember what they were arguing about this time, but she had her two sons with her now, and maybe a 6-month-old in a stroller. They were going back and forth with each other, and the father and son began talking, and taking feathers and rubbing them on the children's faces while whispering in their language. The mother flipped the fuck out. "Don't you put that fucking evil on my babies, you sick fuck. Fuck you. Get the fuck away from my babies." And so on. I was about to step in and tell them to stop when they stood up and said, in a very guilty voice, "We aren't going to do anything to hurt the baby." That's why I even brought the security guard, to make sure everything was okay. To which she replied, "He doesn't even know what the fuck is going on." Truer words have never been spoken. She then says, "If you guys aren't doing anything wrong, then go do it on your pregnant fiance's belly." The dad says, "Okay." Turns to his son to whisper something in his ear, and the kid turned to flip the fuck out. He yells, "You're still fucking evil. I'm half Christian. I'm not doing this evil shit," etc., 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 and takes off running. The dad and his fiance yelled at him to come back, and then he takes off after him. I'm stuck there, trying to get the lady with the kids to leave, now for their own safety. And then I ran off looking for the dad and son. I didn't find them, so I just assumed they left. And therefore, not my problem anymore. Not long after, I saw a fresh blood trail of vomit and blood on the sidewalk, and a knife nearby it, and walked back to the native guy's balcony where I could now see him getting bandaged up by his fiancée due to having a huge gash on his forehead. I called the cops. I hated doing that, but no, it was serious. They came, I explained everything that happened, and they knocked on his door, but there was no answer. They told me there was nothing they could do since the family issue and the dad that was attacked didn't want to talk to them, which made sense, I suppose, from their point of view. No charges were ever filed. The next day I spoke with the manager about the incident, and he told me, "Oh, you mean Mike? Not his real name? Man, I've been keeping an eye on him. He moved here after he got left out of prison for manslaughter." If any of you are familiar with the process for becoming a skinwalker, you know that one of the big steps in order to become one involves murder. I only saw the guy a few times afterwards, and we never done of the incident again, but it was always in the back of my mind whenever I saw him. For the record, I don't personally think people can turn into coyotes or weird magical powers. No disrespect intended to anyone at all, however, I do think that some people think they are capable of such things. Anyways, if someone who is more knowledgeable about these things has any ideas, I'd love to hear them, particularly about the feathers and Kachina tattoos. I knew a native guy years ago who had a specific tattoo put on him by a family member in case he ever got into prison so he couldn't be recruited by the warrior society, the native prison gang. Think their version of the Aryan Brotherhood. And always wondered if they had any hand in the whole Skinwalker thing in the Southwest. If you enjoyed hearing me read these stories, please leave a like and subscribe. It helps more than you know.